sharing where they're dialing in home. And we will be starting, like I said, in about 6 minutes. So you've got just a few minutes to get those last-minute tasks set up. In the meantime, I'll check back in when we get close to starting. Thank you so much. Bye.
Joining me as my co-facilitator. So she and I'll introduce ourselves in just a second, but first we wanted to welcome you guys to our second National Service Coordination webinar. We're pretty excited about this because it's still kind of a new initiative for our work group, but it's pretty thrilling to see the main room, the numbers going up, 138 at 7, 138. We've got a lot of people joining us and more are coming in. And we also know that some of you are huddled up, more than one person around a computer or around a screen, so we are super delighted to have you with us. And like Maria said, we really encourage you to use the chat box as a way to communicate with us. Maria Castanis and I will keep a close eye on what's in there. If we miss a question, we've got other folks, moderators, helping us make sure we catch them later. Feel free to ask your question more than once. We will do our best because that's our way of communicating with you. So we invite you to use that as your voice. So Nancy says, where do I get the paperwork for this session? Maria Maddox just posted that link in there. So click that link, Nancy, and that'll take you to the site. We scroll down a little bit and you will find all the information for the October 17th webinar. Okay, so like I said, this is our second webinar. We actually did our first webinar back in March, and that one focused on broader topics. It really focused on how service coordinators build relationships with families. So we talked about the key principles. We talked about DEC, Division for Early Childhood Recommended Practices. So that was a great experience. We surveyed you guys, the folks that joined us on that webinar, and we heard from you that you wanted to dig deeper into more specific topics around service coordination. So that's what we've tried to do today. So we are going to talk about juggling and overcoming challenges, but Maria and I both really wanted to take advantage of the expertise we have on the phone. So rather than us telling you what we think you ought to do, we want to hear what you're already doing, and we'll share ideas too, but we'd love to hear from those of you on the phone. We have a lot of people on here with us to hear about what you guys do so we could share strategies across states, across programs. That's our goal for today. So I would love to know if you joined our webinar last time in March or if you've watched the archived version, which is at the same link that Maria posted in the chat. So you're going to use your raise hand tool. So look to the left of your slide in that middle participants box where you see your name at the top or whatever you logged in as. Below your name, look for the tiny little hand. It's the third box over towards the right. Click that hand button and let me know if you joined our last webinar or you've watched the recorded version. Awesome. So far we've got 30 people. Good, good. I see a couple more coming in. Well, don't sweat it if you didn't. You're okay. We're not going to track you down, I promise you. But we wanted you to know that that's there. So you can also find that webinar on the on that link that Maria posted in the chat. So we are thrilled that some of you decided to come back for more, and we will talk at the end about our plans. We're hoping to do 2 more webinars next year, so more information will be coming there. So let me advance our slides, and Maria and I wanted to do quick introductions. So I'll go ahead, let me grab my little pointer tool, put my starburst right here on Virginia. I'm down here in the corner. So I'm Dana Childress. I work, as I said, in Virginia on our state's professional development team as an early intervention professional development consultant. So I've been doing this about 8.5 years. Before that, I worked in direct service. So for about 15 years, I was a service coordinator and an educator, so provided special instruction. Virginia calls it developmental services. Did that for a long time. So I really got to feel service coordination, what it's like to juggle those timelines and get all the documentation done and make sure I was seeing families and staying in the loop. That was always a challenge when you don't see families as often as your therapists and educators do, so it was really on me as a service coordinator to stay in the loop. So a lot of the challenges we're going to talk about today I've experienced and worked with service coordinators on, but most importantly, I want to hear from you guys and what you're doing. So Maria, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Dana. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for some. I know we have some different time zones going on. My name is Maria Castanis, and I am the Assistant Director of the Illinois Early Intervention Training Program, and I've been that for a little over 2 years. Previous to that, I was a service coordinator, a lead service coordinator, and trainer for one of the local system point of entry offices in Illinois. And I'm just going to put my little starburst. I am right, it doesn't seem to be working so well, but I am right in Illinois, right by the Chicago area. And like Dana said, I'm really thrilled and excited, and I want to welcome everyone here today for this opportunity to really learn from each other. And I think a lot of us can really think, like, no matter how long you have been a service coordinator, there's always something new to learn. There's always a great idea and a great tip that you can get from another service coordinator. So I really want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone today.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. So I see 3 starbursts. Somebody's getting ahead of us, which is awesome. So what we're going to do next is we wanted you guys to use the same tool and tell us where you are. So the tool we were using, if you look just to the left of your slides, kind of squashed in between the participant box and the map you see on screen, there's a vertical toolbar. The second bar from the top, if you click on that bar, you probably have a starburst or a little smiley face. Click on that icon and then move your cursor to the map. You guys got it. Drop your cursor on your state. If you want to choose the smiley face over the sun, you can click in the lower right-hand corner of that box to choose a different pointer. So we wanted to see where people were from. If any of you are from somewhere outside of the U.S., put it in the white box, the white space, and type it into chat where you are. So somebody's all the way down in the green where you are, so I would love to know actually where you are, so type that in the chat. Looks like we've got a couple people from Hawaii. I wish I was presenting from your location, pretty much, because it would be warmer and way prettier. But we've got people all over New Mexico, Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa. It's awesome. Texas, wonderful. Kentucky, Clinton, Iowa. I see people typing in chat. You always have the option to use chat if any of the tools are a challenge for you. So feel free to do that. And somebody's got their star moving all over the place, so maybe they're just from everywhere. Oh, somebody from Oahu, that's cool. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Is that the name of a town? I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. We just wanted to get a sense of where you were and to see we're all providing, you're providing service coordination across the country. We're all guided by Part C of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But as you guys know, and as we'll talk about today, how service coordination is implemented can be different depending on where you are, depending on how your state works, depending on the guidance you get in your local program. All of us want to be doing high quality service coordination, but it could look a little different depending on where you are, and that's okay. So we're going to talk about that today. So thank you guys for doing that, for playing along there. You can put your pointers away and we're going to keep moving, but you will use them. I think you'll use them later. We'll see. All right, so I wanted to give you a quick skinny about where this effort comes from in case you're interested in joining us. So the webinars came out of work from the Early Intervention, Early Childhood Professional Development Community of Practice, kind of a long name, but what we do, it's a group of folks across the country who come together periodically to meet on the phone, mostly to talk about how to prepare, support early intervention practitioners. So many of us are on state training teams like Maria and I. We have folks that could be faculty. We have some folks that could even be doing professional development at the local program level. But from those discussions, they bubbled up that we all across our different programs needed support with training service coordinators. So from those discussions, the National Service Coordination Training Work Group was pulled together. Right now we have professional development providers from probably 9 or 10 states that are working on initiatives at the state and national level to do things like build a stronger identity for the professionalism of service coordinators to help others know how great you are, and to help produce webinars like this. We're also working on resources like a recommended set of knowledge and skills for service coordinators and other things. So we'll talk to you about those a little bit more towards the end. So it's kind of exciting work, and if it's something that you guys are interested in, feel free to let us know because we're happy to have others join us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maria to get us started on talking about juggling and overcoming challenges.
All right, thanks, Dana. Well, everyone, today we want to have a conversation with you about how you do your job. We really want to start with the things that you love about your job, and then we're going to dig a little deeper into what challenges you. We'll talk about a few service coordination scenarios, and one of the things we're hoping is that you'll share some strategies that you use to address these challenges. At the end of the webinar, we're going to share some resources with you to help you keep learning and then continue the conversation beyond today. So let's go ahead and get started. So I really want to start off on a positive note because I think all of us, if you've done service coordination, there are really things that you really love about the work you do. So when you think about it, think about what makes you smile about being a service coordinator. So just take a minute and put your thoughts into chat. So we're talking about the things that you love about being a service coordinator. So Angelina is saying the families and the kiddos. Lynn is saying helping and learning from families. Such a great point, Lynn. Brenna brought an excellent point, empowering families. Megan saying see the families relief and when they find out that they have resources, seeing families achieve goals. So what I love about what everyone is saying, really, everyone is really talking about supporting families and really helping families find resources, build family skills, build family capacity. I see a couple of people saying, like, really seeing families being excited about what they're learning and what they're really doing to help their children develop and learn. So I really love some of these comments. We have someone from Nebraska saying when kids transition to preschool successfully, and I think as a service coordinator, it really feels good when you've really supported that family and that transition process is successful and seamless as they transition to preschool. So thank you, everyone.
Maria, before you go on, one of the things that I saw a couple people comment about was the variety of the work. So there's always something new and different happening. You're working with different families, doing different things. And I know that was one of the things I loved about service coordination. It was also one of the things that's a big challenge. It's like no day's ever the same, which is great, but you also have to be juggling, kind of like our image at the beginning, juggling a lot because there's always so many different things happening. I'm sure it worked the same way with you in Illinois too.
Absolutely, Dana. And, you know, it was something I really loved as a service coordinator. You're always thinking, you're always being creative on how you're going to support that family, what's going to work best for them. So absolutely, I totally agree with you, Dana. Thanks, everyone. So now, let's shift gears a little bit and think about the hard parts. Along with all these great challenges, I think we've all had days where we feel like this, frustrated, upset. We really do feel like pulling our hair out. So what are the greatest challenges as a service coordinator? What really makes you feel like the woman on the screen? So take a minute and type some of those challenges into the chat box. So I see we have a lot of comments. We have quite a few people saying timelines and paperwork, and then Alicia from Colorado is saying paperwork and the workload. I have, let's see, Pat is saying changes in staff. Brittany is saying not enough providers to meet timelines. We have Nikki that's saying paperwork, timelines, and the number of families that we serve. Sue is saying families that aren't there when I show up for a home visit. That can definitely be frustrating for a service coordinator. Jeannie and Laura is saying chasing families. And it could feel that way sometimes. that we're chasing the families, but I think, you know, we have to step back and really think about what's going on here. Someone from Illinois is saying regulations and repetitive tasks. Gloria is saying paperwork. Phyllis is saying paperwork, the redundancy and the lack of resources at times. You're right, Phyllis, sometimes as a service coordinator, you really have to find the resources even when they're not readily available. Megan is saying communication with providers. We have another person that's saying high number of families served, travel time, and absolutely, Sarah, I think a lot of times as a service coordinator, you're spending a lot of time in the car going to appointments, meeting with families. So Jill brings up an excellent point, having families understand our role and how valuable we are. So really, you know, even as a service coordination work group, that's something that's important for all of us, is to really understand, professionalize, and highlight the role of service coordinators, because as service coordinators, you know, there's a lot that happens. There's a lot of things that service coordinators have to do. Keandra is saying working with the school district at times. Pam brings up a great point. When a family is in survival mode, they cannot focus on their child's development. And Pam, that's an excellent point, because I think as a service coordinator, we sometimes have to adapt with what's going on with the family, where they at the moment. So absolutely, I see a lot more on staff turnover. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything, Dana. I'm just going through the chat log, but these are all things I think that challenge service coordinators no matter where you are in the nation, no matter what state you are. These are just some similarities that come across all service coordinators.
I completely agree, Maria. I think you did a fantastic job, because that chat was flying. So much was going in there. We have a lot of stuff that can make the job feel kind of like you want to pull your hair out. One of the things I thought was funny is you hadn't even finished your opening sentence about the slide, and people were already typing in paperwork and timelines. And, you know, I thought that was interesting. Like, it doesn't take us long to come up with those things that drive us a little bananas. But they're a part of the work, right? And so we have to figure out how to do them well. Some of them are closely monitored. Some of them are many of them are quality issues. So it's like we might not love it, but that, you know, paperwork, timelines might not be a part of our job that we love, but service coordinators, you got to figure out how to do it. So that's what we're going to next. We're going to talk about we're going to kind of group a lot of what you guys talked about in two categories. So I'm going to show you what those are. So what we did is we actually took feedback from the people that joined the webinar in March, plus feedback that we got when we did a survey about service coordination to 8 states, and we tried to find out from them what were their challenges. If they had a magic wand, poof, what could they do to make things better in their systems? And then we kind of grouped that feedback into these categories. So juggling the workload and coordinating and communicating with team members. So what we want you to do is we want you guys to help us pick which one of these categories are we going to talk about first. So here's where you're going to use your pointer tool again. I want to invite you to pick up that little pointer icon again. Remember, it's in the little vertical toolbar to the left of your slide. Second box down, click on it, and drop the pointer. You can only drop one. In which, the green or the blue circle, which one do you want to tackle first? If you're having any trouble with the pointer tool, feel free to type it into the chat. When you use the pointer tool, it will give us a look at what's the priority for you guys. This is kind of like those Choose Your Own Adventure books. Did anybody else other than me love those when you were kids? Those were totally my favorite books. Well, looks like Maria, we've got a lot of people in both sides, and people writing in juggling the workload. So we are going to address them both, I will tell you. So I think we'll probably start with juggling the workload, because it looks like that's the one that's filling up the fastest. And then we will hit coordinating and communicating with team members as well. So don't worry, we're going to get them both. We just wanted your help knowing where to start. Alrighty, so I'm going to advance us to juggling the workload, and what you will see are some different, some categories around juggling the workload, and then Maria's going to talk us through it and pull in your ideas for how you manage and overcome those challenges. So Maria, I'm going to advance us to the slide, juggling the workload.
All right, thanks, Dana. So we're going to dig a little deeper into what's hard about juggling the workload. We can see that there's multiple challenges. So to be a good service coordinator, it really is essential that you stay organized, meaning that you have some kind of system in place to keep track of your work. You must also have time management skills. One of the things we hear from service coordinator is that there's so much paperwork and so many forms to keep track of and to get signed that it can be challenging to actually manage all the required timelines across so many families that you serve. It can also be even more challenging when you serve a very high number of families. So one of the things I want people to do before we go any further, really think about the amount of families that you serve at this moment, and if you can just put it in the chat box, that would be great. I know when I was a service coordinator, that really varied at times depending on what was going on at the system point of entry office. So take a minute and put in the chat how many families you serve. So we have some numbers coming in. I see some high numbers like 84. We have some numbers in the 30s. And then I see some lower numbers in the 20s. And I think like across, depending on the state where you work, those numbers can really vary. And sometimes as a service coordinator, and I think we all may have experienced this, you serve a lower number of families, but the family requires lots of support. So it can really be even more challenging when you're working with a family that at a certain given time, they require a lot of support from you, a lot of encouragement to really to move on. So I think, you know, caseload size can really vary from state to state, and sometimes, you know, service coordinators may serve a less number of families, but they serve a very rural area, and the travel time is just it's a lot. So it can you know, the number of families you serve can really affect the ability to do the work, and then also the circumstance in which you serve them. So if families require a lot of support, depending on how far you have to travel, all these factors come into play. Now we want to see what aspects of juggling the workload is particularly challenging for you. So what I'm going to have you do is take your drawing tool, and that's right at this at your left-hand corner. You're going to see something that looks like a pen, and what I want you to do is use the drawing tool and then put a check mark next to one of the biggest challenges that you have.
Absolutely, guys. So know that if you use your pointer, you'll only be able to drop one pointer. So if you are challenged by so much paperwork and keeping up with timelines, you wouldn't be able to drop a pointer on both, but you can use the drawing tool to indicate more than one. You can also use your chat box if you're having any trouble with the tools. It looks like, Maria, there's a lot happening around that, so much paperwork, keeping up with timelines, and someone has put a big red circle around serving lots of families.
Yeah. I can see that. It seems like all of these challenges, we have lots of people, but serving lots of families and so much paperwork is really a huge one. Now, what I want everyone to do is to really think about the challenges that you see here on the screen. Is there something else that we've missed that we haven't captured on the screen? Please feel free to put that in the chat box as well. So we want to know about that. So just take a minute and put it in the chat if you have anything. If this kind of covers everything, then you can leave it as is.
And you know, Maria, I would be interested as they're processing this to know what kind of things do you guys do to handle your biggest challenge? Looks like Tirsa says travel, period. That's a hard one for sure. I remember that crazy travel time. So now somebody has just scribbled over the whole thing to say it's all a challenge. So what I'm going to do, Maria, while you process this, I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen, everybody, so we can see our 5 challenges, and then we'll talk about how we address them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dana. And I'm just going to go through, we see a lot of travel time, and definitely that's something that you really have to take into account as you're serving lots of families. You have to really build that in your day, and then also have time to do all everything else. I see Sue is saying wearing multiple hats: service coordinator, developmental services provider, 3 to 5 in school services. Kelsey is saying better training for starting the job or more guidelines. So really having, I think, Kelsey, what you're saying is having more of that upfront training so you're really more prepared as you start a job rather than learning on the job. Let's see, Paula is saying, I don't know where it would go or if it fits, but doing referrals to doctors and other agencies, so that can definitely, you know, as you're reaching out to doctors and other outside resources, that can be a challenging as well. Ashley is saying more training, more shadowing, more structures or more checklists. So Ashley, what I think you're saying is to really kind of come in with the tools and not learn them on the job. So thank you, everyone. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to switch the slide and we're going to look at a scenario. You're going to see a lot of text, and I'm going to read the scenario just in case anyone is connected only to the audio feed. After reading the scenario, what I want people to do is to type some suggestions into the chat box to see how this service coordinator could improve her situation. And I think, like, as I move to this scenario, as we read it and we think about it, you'll recognize that, you know, a person like that, you know, the struggles that this service coordinator has could definitely be some struggles that any one of us could have, or maybe you may even know someone that has these struggles. So Jackie partners with 65 families and is expected to contact them monthly. She often feels overwhelmed by everything she has to do. She's struggling to keep up with the required timelines. She recently missed 2 45-day timelines and forgot an annual IFSP review. She's about a month behind in entering her documentation in the child's record. And to top it all off, she just found 2 new referrals in her inbox and needs to call them to schedule the intake as soon as possible. So one of the things I want people to imagine is, imagine that Jackie is your colleague, and if you were to give her some advice, what kind of advice would you give her to help her really to manage all the work that she has to do? So type your ideas in chat. So we have someone that says, Alicia is saying, I am Jackie. Sarah is saying, prioritize. Many people are saying, I am Jackie too. And, you know, one of the things I think we should all realize, you know, it could happen with the amount of work that a service coordinator has to do and all the tasks that are required by a service coordinator. It's very easy to fall behind. So let's get into some of the suggestion. Someone brought up a really great suggestion. I could barely keep up with this chat box, everyone. Someone said, Lynn actually is saying, first ask Jackie what she believes she needs. That's a great one. Like, really thinking about, like, what would be helpful rather than making an assumption. Janet is saying set up an Excel spreadsheet for timelines. Jackie, you're a woman after my own heart. When I was a service coordinator, I always had an Excel spreadsheet just to keep up with everything that was changing. Carrie is saying keep your calendar updated prior to the deadlines and give yourself ample reminders. And I think, Carrie, that's such a great it's such a great suggestion. I know back when I was a service coordinator, I would often print all the families that I served with due dates 3 months ahead of time, and people would really kind of look at me like I had two heads. They would say, like, why are you printing this out like 2 months ahead of time? But one of the reasons was it really allowed me to really get a picture of what was going on, what I needed to do, and if a particular month was going to be very busy, I could plan ahead and maybe do some things early rather than, wait for that month. So so that was a great point. Pam is saying upload documentation instead of entering it into the system. And I think for some people, they may have to enter it. Other people do have the ability to upload it. Let's see. Making charts for timelines, that's coming from Erin. Thank you, Erin. Using apps to help with reminders of timelines and a Google Calendar. Great, great. Put dates in the child's file. With calls, I make sure that they are Medicaid kiddos. Are monthly so that we can get credit through targeted case management. Have supervisor help figure out priority, and that's from Melinda. That's great, Melinda. Really kind of going back to what someone said at the beginning, asking Jackie what kind of help does she need, and then really working together with the supervisor to prioritize. Make a spreadsheet with family due dates. Someone else brought up a good one. Ask Jackie what she's already tried. Jessica saying, take a small vacation. Jessica, I can totally relate to that, but sometimes when you take that small vacation, when you come back, it is, you're even a little bit further behind. Iria is saying to avoid missing timelines. I see the IFSP every time I visit a family and read the due date. So I like that, Iria, because thinking about, every time you see a family revisiting that IFSP and even really thinking about that IFSP can really not only help the service coordinator with the timelines, but it really kind of communicates with the entire team to let them know, hey, this is what's going on. Someone from Nebraska said practice self-care. Absolutely, we do need to take that time and practice self-care so we can do what we do.
Hey Maria, I saw one in here that I loved that was scheduling time, booking time in your schedule to get your work done, to check in on the timelines, to get the your work done. And there was somebody on the phone, Karen in Chesapeake. You taught me something when I worked with you about, I believe there was a time when you said you scheduled time at the end of the day, every day, to get some paperwork done, to some catch-up time every day. And I loved that idea. Some people schedule it on Fridays, or they schedule just a little bit of time, but I love it. It's block that time and honor it, which is hard to do, but to make sure you build it in. It's as important in your schedule as it is seeing families. You've got to get it done. Maria, one other thing I wanted to bring up is I see in chat there are some people saying they're hearing background noise for those of you that I think called in on the phone. If you're calling in on the phone, please be sure that you've muted your line so that others aren't hearing it. I'm not hearing background noise right now, but just I wanted to let you guys know that we'll see it. I do see Amanda has said, she schedules every Friday morning. She has booked for paperwork. That's a great idea, Amanda, so you can kind of catch up before you go home for the weekend and you don't have to worry about that paperwork. Or like I do, think about it in the shower because it's hanging over you all weekend. So scheduling time in your day for that is a great idea. Another one I've heard people say is even if you jot down some shorthand notes somewhere, make sure you've documented as fast as you can after the activity, because if you wait and do all your documentation a week or two later, you're going to forget stuff, and so you need that level of specificity to make sure you know you're not missing timelines, you've scheduled things, you've reached out to the people that need to be involved in that annual review, etc. So lots of good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely, Dana. And I love the idea of scheduling a day or even scheduling some time. And I just think that really if we think about the time for paperwork, having equal importance as appointments with families and other tasks that a service coordinator have to do, and it's just part of your regular day, and you schedule it just like you would schedule an appointment on your calendar, it really does set that priority for you, and it allows you the time to do some of those tasks. So great
Definitely.
ideas, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think, you know, we came up with some great ideas to support Jackie or anyone who at any given time may feel like Jackie, because that can happen at times. And I think together we can really figure out some ways to support each other in service coordination.
That would, yep, absolutely. I love the honesty in the chat, Maria, where people said, me, Jackie, I am Jackie. I think if you are Jackie, we hope you've gotten some ideas here, but we really hope you'll reach out to your supervisor for some support, your colleagues to gather information. Angelina says here she has a service coordinator who created a really great resource that she'd love to share through email. So Angelina, if you want to send it to one of us, to Maria or I, we can take a look at it, and maybe that's something we can share via our website. So if you guys have great resources, share them in your locality, share them in your state, and we could certainly be happy to see what we can share here. I know in Virginia we have a professional development center website where we have to vet our resources to make sure, you know, they're aligned with all of our state procedures. But when we have great stuff, we love sharing it widely, because why reinvent the wheel if somebody else has already created a great Excel spreadsheet or a great resource? So absolutely, feel free to share them among each other and then send them to us. And if it's something we can share, you know, we could certainly do that.
Yeah, absolutely, Dana.
All right, Maria, well, I guess should we go ahead on to our next category? What do you think?
I definitely think so.
All right, and it looks like Shamika has put her email address in the chat. So Shamika really wants to see that spreadsheet or that resource. So if you guys, Angelina, if maybe you can connect with Shamika and share that, that would be awesome. Carla, oh, I think Angelina, you have opened up a can of worms. Carla has asked too. So if you guys can share it, I love it. That would be the point of this kind of, Melinda says, can we all have it? Absolutely, Angelina, send it to us and we'll see what we can do. All right, guys, well, I'm going to move us ahead. I'm just checking to see. I want to address the audio issue. Maria Maddox said if you're having audio issue, it's not on the webinar side, it's just on the phone side. So please make sure to double check your mute button on your phone. Oftentimes we think we're muted and we're not, so a great way to test that is to, you know, just be listening and just double check on your phone. I know sometimes that's a little tricky, but I love it that you guys are sharing emails. Fantastic. All right, well, in the interest of time and making sure we address those of you that wanted to do the coordinating and communicating, let's go there. All right. I believe that's our next slide. It is. Okay, good. So here we're going to shift gears a little bit to thinking about how to coordinate and communicate with your team members. So similar to what we just saw, we've got some ideas here that really bubbled up from our feedback. And I saw you guys noting some things in your chat earlier on with your challenges, things like when it's hard to reach families or hard to reach your service providers, or they won't call you back. That makes it really hard to keep in the loop, right? So if nobody's keeping you in the loop, it's hard to do your job. So what do you guys do? I want to know in the chat, what do you do when you're hard to reach a family or a service provider? You're trying to call them, they're not calling you back. What's your plan B? What do you do to make sure you're in the loop? So Teresa says, I'm sorry, I'm not saying your name, might be Tirsa. She says follow-up emails, drive-by home visits. Sue says mail a letter. Alicia, we're going to ask that actually about who's not allowed to text or email. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So Abby says, I show up at the house. So sometimes, thank you Tirsa, I got you. Text. Talk to other providers. You can call. Ask the family what's the best way to contact them. That's great because a lot of families really do have a preference, and they say, if you call me, I'm not even going to listen to the voicemail, but if you text me, I will get back to you pretty quick. Somebody else puts in, call during a session. That's another great idea. If you can call when you know the service provider's there, maybe you'll have some luck linking up. Go ahead, Maria.
I was going to say, Dana, when I was a service coordinator, one of the things that really helped me with families was I would ask them up front, respond after we had the first few contacts, what is the best way for me to reach you? And that really ensured success in reaching the family. And I remember early on that I had a family that said, you know, don't call me. I'm never going to get the message. I don't check my voicemail. You know, send me an email, and then, you know, I'll respond to you every single time. So really, I think it's so important to ask the family initially, what is their preferred mode of communication, and then, you know, work with that, and you know, as far as having more success with families, it really is helpful that way.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love this idea. I think it's from Logan. It says, kindness, you know, bring a treat maybe if that's something you're able to do. You want to, I think you can even just bring a treat by being the treat, which is a funny thing to say, but make it so that the families really know you care, you're interested. You're not just calling to say, how's physical therapy going? And that's all you ask. Celebrate successes with the family. Become a part of that system where they know they have somebody as a resource and who's going to celebrate with them, and they're going to be more likely to remember who you are and return your calls. Doris says texting with families work best. Rhoda says a lot of families prefer. So let's switch to talking about that. So you see up here, I'll grab my pointer. Well, maybe not. So not allowed to text or email. So raise your hand if you are not allowed to text or email with families. So look to your participant box, look at that little hand button under your name, raise your hand for me. CIBH Chesapeake, I think that's you guys, not allowed to text. I remember that if that's you guys. So we don't have a lot of people raising their hand, a small proportion of families. Paula says if she does, it usually needs to be encrypted, so something to think about. So some folks aren't, some folks are still limited there. I'm seeing people pop up in the chat as well. We can't text, but our therapists can. So sometimes texting or emailing really is a system or a program issue because of privacy. So sometimes we also have to get a certain kind of a release form signed in order to be able to text or email. So it's hard when you're not allowed to, when that's a lot of people's preferred mode of communication. So I definitely hear you on that. I'm actually glad to see that we don't have, what do we have, 190 people on. I'm glad we don't have that many people not allowed, but it is hard. Keandra says she has a phone for the agency that she's allowed to text on, so not using her own personal phone, but using the agency phone. And CSC6 says some of our service coordinators created Google numbers to keep it confidential. So you can use your own phone, but you have a Google phone number that is routed through. That's a great idea to keep things confidential. Cliff says he does have to use his personal phone. Let's see. Karen says, I will not call, or I won't text the family since it would give them access to my personal phone. Yeah, it's definitely something for you to think about. The Google Text is nice, though. It still comes to your phone, but they don't have your personal phone number. And you can have it. You can actually set it up so that the person has to, you will know who's calling before you answer. So say it's a Saturday afternoon and the family's trying to reach you through your Google, you can choose whether or not to answer because you will know ahead of time. Usually you have to say their name. So Google Voice is a pretty nice resource if your agency allows it. So definitely hear it, that can be a challenge.
And Dana, I see that that some people are chatting in that their agency has specific consents for text and emails. So I know it really varies agency to agency and program to program. I think as service coordinators, you really need to find out what is the procedure at your agency, and then move forward from there. But definitely, you know, it does vary, and you know, today a lot of families do like texting, and there's times that we can do it with certain agencies and other times that we can't, and it really is, you know, we have to see what is the policy and procedure of the agency and then what's going to work best for families as well.
Definitely, I'm glad you brought up both, because it might be easiest for us to text, but we've got to figure out, are we allowed? Is family confidentiality protected? And are families okay with it? So good stuff to think through. Let's go with our next one here. I wanted to talk about this one because I saw people bring this up a lot in the chat earlier. Not enough service providers. So this one is a hairy situation, right? I mean, if families are found entitled for a service, then they're entitled for that service. But then what do you do when you don't have that provider? So a family is their child, the IFSP team has decided, you know, speech therapy is the most appropriate service, but you don't have a speech therapist on staff right then. And that could happen with any discipline. So I'm curious to know, type into chat for me, what are you doing? How do you handle things? How do you think creatively while honoring the family's entitlement when you don't have enough service providers? And Maria mentioned earlier, I know in our state, sometimes this has come up well, anywhere, but more rural areas when you have a lot of space to cover and maybe you don't have your full team. I've seen it come up in more urban areas too, just depends on hiring and turnover. Turnover can be a beast sometimes in EI. Angelina says she works with other agencies, so look at other options. Paula says, big struggle, don't have an answer. Yeah, Angelina says sometimes maybe if the developmental specialist was equally qualified to work with that family on the outcomes on their IFSP, that maybe they would have that service could be useful for them. Provide the services via consult with the needed discipline. So yeah, I've seen that before where maybe you have the developmental service provider go in and the speech therapist is consulting monthly to make sure, you know, to provide those supports. Alicia says, just putting it out there, if anybody knows an SLP who wants to move to Colorado, hit her up. I love it. Little free plug. That's awesome. Some people say they're using a primary service provider model to help them. And, you know, really when you have early interventionists, whatever their discipline, who are well trained to look at development from all areas, you do have flexibility. We know that just because a child has a speech type of an issue and that's what the outcome is, it doesn't mean that child has to receive speech therapy, right? We're going to do our best to try to match families and service providers based on skills and abilities, but I know that's not always, it's still challenging, right? I love it. Phyllis says telehealth. Sometimes I know there are some states that are looking into telehealth and there's some research that's supporting that. So telehealth for you guys would be doing like we're doing today, except using a webcam so the service provider joins the parent through the webcam, watches what the family's doing, and imagine that, coaches the family through distance. I mean, that's really when your coaching skills need to be honed. I love it. Let's see, anything else, Maria, comes to mind about that? I don't know. I think the big thing for us, I think, is when you don't have a service provider, you have to document how you're making your decisions and to make sure that you have, the families are getting what they need.
Absolutely. I think you're so right. You have to keep documenting, and then I think that we had an overall theme in the chat that just said, you know, we also have to be creative. They're entitled to the service, but we also have to be creative. How are we going to help them achieve the outcome? How are we going to support the family? And be creative about it. And while we're looking to find that service that they're entitled to support the outcome, I think we can be creative and still help families and support families in achieving that outcome.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I see somebody writing, some families don't like telehealth, not one bit. I think it just, you know, it depends. It's definitely a new way of providing services, and not everybody's doing it. But it's something that's could be considered if that fits within the way your state and your program operates. Not up to us, but just, you know, some people are trying that. Let's see, Lynn says, need to be able to use telehealth, and yeah, that's something she's interested in. Yeah, for sure. So there's lots of options out there. We just have to be creative to make sure families are served. I know another option that I've come across is, and this is sort of a rare instance, but like somebody said, you could look into other agencies. We have in the past had to link up with maybe a therapy provider who could see a child in a clinic, but that was a very temporary situation. It had to be explained on the IFSP and notified our state level folks that this is what we were doing as a temporary measure with a very specific plan for how to help that child's services get back into the natural environment. So that might fly in some places, not in others, but we just have to think creatively. But when you face this, always go back to your supervisor to help you problem solve, for sure. So the last one here I have is not communicating with each other. And I think we covered that a little bit with the hard to reach, won't call you back, lots of different ideas. This one is really helping you get your providers communicating with each other, not just with you. So so that's certainly an important role of our service coordinators. I'm going to go ahead, since we touched on that one a little bit, and move us to the next slide where we're going to see our scenario to walk through. Similarly, I'm going to read it for you guys in case, because we know some people are just joining the audio feed. And then I want you to think about, if you were William, the service coordinator's supervisor, what kind of guidance might you do to help him in this situation? Okay? All right. All right, so William, I'll move my chat so I can see. William enjoys working with his team members and likes to get to know them on a personal level. He feels he's got good working relationships, but his team members actually struggle to work with him. He takes days to return calls and messages, rarely checks in with service providers about how services are going. When he does return the message, he usually emphasizes how busy he is. William is often late to visits or leaves early to get to his next visit. When he promises to do something like schedule an IFSP review meeting or locate a resource, he typically needs reminders to follow through. So William thinks he's doing pretty well, but his service coordination is not having a great effect on other people. So what would you advise William? What kind of supports might need to happen here to get William in a better place so that things are working? Because this scenario really points out that what you do has a larger effect, not just on the family, but your other team members as well. So let's see what folks are saying. Depends on the needs and the outcomes. So yeah, we'd have to talk with the supervisor, would need to be involved. Document the problems, maybe work on time management with him. Set up a schedule, monitor. Maybe William needs some closer supervision to help him clean some of this up, right? If you were another service provider, we have talked to the supervisor, give him a reminder about the timeline. So maybe if you were one of those colleagues, talk to the supervisor for some help. Ask him what he feels he's doing well and what he needs help with. Karen, that's a great positive approach to it. Maybe Nebraska says, I talked to him about how he's spending his time. Maybe he's got the right idea, building relationships. He might be spending so much time doing that maybe he needs to shift his focus and get organized so he's not scheduling visits so closely and so he can return those messages. Because if he's not doing what's in the second and third paragraphs, he's really struggling to do high-quality service coordination. Did you have a thought about this, Maria?
I did. I was going to say, I see a lot of people in chat really talking about, does William even realize that he's doing it? So I think like one of the themes is William may have really good intentions, and one of the things that he wants to do is rush to capture and serve all the families that he's working with, and he's trying to go and do it all. So really having a conversation with William about what's going on, what is happening, and really maybe William will have some realization and then come up with a plan. So I think we have a lot of people put in chat here that William may not even realize that this is going on. And, at the beginning of the scenario, it says that William enjoys working with his team members and gets to know them on a personal level. But I think, some people said in chat, like, William may take a lot of time building these relationships that other things kind of fall away. So really thinking about time management, or even maybe doing a time study with William to see where is he spending all his time and what can he really work on to capture everything that he needs to do.
Yeah, I think I love that. I love it that you guys are taking a positive approach to how can we support William. I think because chances are service coordinators come to this job, we want to do the best we can by families, right? He might be building great relationships, but maybe he needs somebody brought up in the chat, was he trained well? Does he really know how to manage and coordinate his time? I would wonder too, how many families is William serving? It could be that he's got 20 and he's still struggling. It could be that he has 95 and he needs somebody to mentor him to help him think about how to do this work. So one of the things when he says emphasizes how busy he is, I'm wondering if William is feeling pretty stressed. So how can we support him with that? Let's see. Mecca Clovis says a peer or supervisor can sit with William and discuss ideas to improve work production. So he sounds like he needs some more support for sure. Alrighty, guys. Well, I'm looking at our time, and I see it's almost 2 o'clock my time. We have about 15 more minutes. So let's move on to the last sort of choice of the day. and we wanted to find out what other challenges do you face. Is there a challenge that we haven't talked about today that you would really like to process with all the people on the phone? If you want to type it into chat, Maria and I will probably just pick one given our time, and maybe we could see what others are doing about that challenge and just get some ideas here. So Alicia says, balancing the dual role. So Alicia, I'm thinking you mean you might be a service coordinator and a developmental service provider or a therapist. Is that right? I'm just waiting to see if she types into chat, because we can certainly talk about that. Yes, okay. So there are different models of early intervention, and oftentimes that's how your program works is dependent on your state or program level. Some places are in what are called a dedicated or designated model where you're service coordination only. That's the only role you play with families. Some play both roles, so they might be a service coordinator and an OT, or service coordinator and early childhood special ed consultant, developmental therapist, etc. And that can be challenging to juggle both of those. So tell me, how do you manage your service coordination duty in the context of having both roles? How do you make sure you're addressing service coordination while you're also addressing other things? Type that into chat for me. Let's see, people actually have got lots of other good questions here. Strategies for how to work with families whose children are medically unstable, maybe medically fragile. Oh gosh, Jenny says low pay and difficulty getting quality staff. That's a bear of a question, Jenny, but I hear you. Inadequate pay, Amanda says too. Let's see.
We also have...
So Karen actually addresses... Oh, I was going to say, sorry, Maria, I was going to say Karen addressed our original question. She has a team with one service coordinator, one developmental services. She mostly takes developmental services and service coordination for them only. So other team members take other cases, just depends. They kind of work that out among their teams.
I was going to say, Dana, we also had some people that chatted in about really struggling with interpretation and translation in rural areas where those interpreters and translators are really hard to find. And we also, we have someone from Nebraska saying finding the time to do an RBI, meeting required timelines, and then implementing the RBI goals.
Yeah, we've got lots in here. I wish I could address and see quite a few people writing about the pay and finding staff. And, I would think that the pay is a problem in many states. And I think across service coordination, we hear that service coordinators generally often feel undervalued, and pay is part of that. There are a wide variety across the country of the minimum standards to provide service coordination. Somebody said in here, low pay for a master's degree. Other states don't require a bachelor's degree. They might have different all the way from high school diploma up to master's degree. So the difference in requirements, I think, contributes to the pay discrepancies. There's lots of reasons for it. I wish we could solve that one here, but I know that's a challenge. Reimbursement rates can be an issue as well. Lots of challenges. This is actually really helpful. I'm going to tell you guys, we won't get to address all of these today because we're in our home stretch, but Maria and I and the rest of the service coordination work group will certainly take your feedback in here about other challenges, and that'll help us think about what maybe we want to tackle in one of our next webinars. So this is really helpful. I see folks talking about dual roles, translating the IFSP like you said, Maria, issues with medical records. I'm just looking to see if I missed anything else. Need written clarity on roles and expectations, Eric says in Delaware. Yeah, that's certainly helpful to have that, have everything laid out so at least you know what to expect, and then programs often adjust that, just depending on how their programs work, but I hear you.
And Arlene is saying obtaining medical records from out of state, and I know it can be difficult at times because sometimes whether you're the a family is moving to another state and getting the record to the appropriate person. And I know in the past when I've been a service coordinator, one of the things that when families left the state, we would make the referral, but they would also have a copy of all their records to go with them, and that way we made sure there was that extra copy out there that the family had. So definitely,
good. That's a good.
Yeah, as families moved state to state, you know, we wanted to preserve their service plan, but we wanted to make sure that information was communicated. Carla brings up a great point. Getting records from local doctors' offices can be difficult at times. And Carla, you bring up such a great point. And one of the things that you know, I really loved doing when I was a service coordinator, every time I struggled to get a record or a prescription for something, I would really partner with the family. It was really a way for us together in partnership to work on something together to achieve something that we needed to get that would really benefit both the service coordinator in getting the required documentation and then the family. So it was something, one of those like joint goals that we would work on together. So thank you, Carla. That is that's a great one. Really think about how you're requesting those records and, you know, bringing the family into that and really having that shared responsibility.
Good, awesome. Well, I love Nanette's question. I think, Nanette, you might have been the person earlier to ask something about helping families, family service coordinators develop and do the job at the same time. So I think that's a great question. With all this thing to juggle, how do you also build in professional development and growth? We hope that the webinar and the webinars, these will be archived, that it's something that you can use with your staff. We also are going to transition now to wrapping things up, but please don't hang up, don't go. We want to show you some resources you have to help with that professional development, to help your service coordinators grow and continue the conversation. So hang in there, and we're going to show that to you now as we get wrapped up. So I'm going to go, so Maria and I will just kind of move towards telling you about some different resources that are out there. So go ahead, Maria, let's go ahead and start wrapping them up.
So we really believe that service coordination is full of wonderful, but also at the same time challenging moments. When those challenges hit you, one of the things that's really important to remember is that service coordination is important. It really is the linchpin of the EI system. There are always going to be challenging moments, but I think we all know that you will rise to the challenge. Remember what you typed into chat earlier and all the things you love doing about your job. At the end of the day, what you do really does make a difference for children and families. So one important takeaway is whatever you do, do it well. You know, it is one of the things that will stay with the family long after they leave our system.
Absolutely. And I hope that from the webinar today you've gotten a sense, we may or may not have solved your problem. We may have, hopefully we've given you some idea and some food for thought, but I also hope you see that you're not in it alone. Service coordinators across the country are doing great work and also juggling similar challenges. So reach out to people around you. Reach out to programs, even service coordinators and other programs in your state to support each other, because there's an awful lot of good stuff out there, good expertise. So reach out to each other for support. So let me show you some resources. So the National Service Coordinator Training Workgroup, we have the webinar resource page, which we're going to pop that into chat again. If you go to that site, you can find a resource handout with live links. It's a PDF with links to lots of resources in different states from the workgroup workgroup members. We've tried to pull things that will help you to continue the discussion about juggling and overcoming challenges. We also have built a reflection activity that we would encourage you to use, and it's built around lots of open-ended questions you can ask. You can have some conversation with your staff, maybe at a staff meeting or meet for lunch and talk about this, to keep the conversation going. Not so much to say, yes, I hate the timelines, I'm overwhelmed with this or that. We all need to vent sometimes, but we want the reflection activity to help you tap into the resources in your program to solve the problems and gather ideas to help you overcome challenges. So that's there. We encourage you to take advantage of it. We'd also love for those of you that are trainers and supervisors to mark your calendar. We'll have a follow-up discussion December 3rd, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, to help you guys keep this conversation going. So it'll be a follow-up discussion to learn more about how you take the information from our webinar today and use it with your staff afterwards. So keep a lookout for that. If you signed up for the webinar today and indicated that you were a trainer, TA kind of person, you'll receive an email after today with an invitation. But if you're interested in it and you don't get that email, just reach out to one of us and let us know. So I'm going to turn it back over to Maria Mattis to talk you through your certificate and survey, and then the last slide today will have Maria Castanis and I's email address so you can reach out to us directly. So Maria Mattis?
Thanks, Jamie. I just wanted to let you guys know that you are going to be getting 1.5 EI credit hours for participating today. So how that will work is that it provides Illinois EI credit and Illinois state licensure. So, but you will need to talk with your state training groups to determine how they will issue you your credit for your state. So we're only able to issue the training certificates for those that also registered prior to the event. So if you participated in a group, and you would have needed to register prior. So if you didn't register prior, you'll need to contact the email address on there to see what it would take to get that registration to get the certificate going. You will need to complete the email certificate that you're going to receive in order to get your certification of attendance. So if you didn't register, check with your supervisor, check with your state Part C office to see how you can document your participation today. And then the contact hours will be added based on your state's licensure requirements. So if you're in Illinois, it's a pretty simple project. If you're not, it's still going to be simple. You just may have to make one more phone call. But you should be getting this email from the EI training program with a link to a survey. Complete the survey to get your attendance certificate. Okay? If there aren't any questions, or do you have any questions about this or anything like that, I don't think there's anything else I need to add. Let me switch you over here to Dana and Maria's email address. So if you have questions for them, please feel free to contact them. Dana, Maria, do you have anything else that you wanted to add or say before we go?
I just want to thank everyone for joining us today and sharing with us and really problem solving with us. It's been, I think, a great webinar, and I just want to thank everyone for their participation and really sharing their great ideas with other service coordinators. Thanks, everyone.
Yep, and I will piggyback on that. Thanks, you guys, for giving us an hour and 15 minutes of your time. I know your time is valuable, so we really appreciate having you with us and sharing your ideas. And we hope that you will join us again, probably in the springtime, for our next webinar. So if you have feedback about today, please fill out the survey and let us know what you think and let us know what you'd like to talk about next time. So thanks, everybody, so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
And if you go to those links that we've been posting, there are additional information about the December webinars and things like that. So thank you again, everyone. We'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.